Hey everybody, welcome back to Shock and Shellac. I'm your host, Herschel Gillis, and today is day 25 of my 31 Days of Horror Reviews, and I'm going to be covering um, Boko Hanban. God, I'm sorry for mispronouncing that, but Pleasure Kill in English, from Hisayasu Sato, the infamous precursor to his other film, Splatter, Naked Blood. He's done a ton of films, obviously. He's one of my favorite directors. Um, and Hisayasu Sato is a name that sort of carries a certain weight. He is known for making perverse pinku films, but they also hide a subtlety to a lot of them that I think some people miss out on. There are a lot of people that see his films and they just focus on the nasty parts, I guess you could say, when there's some seriously moving and powerful statements that are in a lot of these. This is not one of them. um, but Pleasure Kill, what's it about? A teenager who follows in his late father's footsteps by making this serum that is it blurs the line between pleasure and pain, sort of like Hellraiser, like their whole thing. This is like that, except with much more assault. Yeah, it gets rough. This is a rough movie. That's the basic premise of the story, though, and that's pretty much what carries it through. There's not a whole lot of twists or turns. The serum gets administered to a group of women, much like Splatter Naked Blood, which comes later. But this one differs from that film both in that it's shorter and that it focuses much more on the pinku side of things rather than the splatter horror, which Splatter Naked Blood focuses more on. This one is much more about the sexual, like, violence and sadism versus the more graphic, like, gory body horror stuff later on where they're like, the woman takes her eye out and stuff like that. Funny enough, there's also an eye part in this, but it's much less graphic. The acting in this is great. Uh, Sato makes films really well. That's a very basic way of saying it, but he's one of my favorite directors. He has a way of writing films that it's really good and it's interesting and it keeps you really engaged throughout the film. I think he uses perversion, a lot of this, as sort of like a tool to do so, um, but he backs it up with his writing and his actors. His actors are always good. This one is no different in that regard. Very believable. And the music, soundtrack, everything is great there. But you didn't come here for that, did you? You came here to talk about the nasty things. And there is some nastiness here. I don't want to spoil too much, but there is incestuous sexual assault that is extended for a while, and it is very rough. There's some self-harm, self-mutilation stuff that's comes from like the plotline of this. There's one scene that I won't spoil at all. It just involves a tube and blood, and it is totally unique, and I have not seen it before in any film away from this, including Splatter Naked Blood, which came after. That also has parts that I hadn't seen. But yeah, very interesting, and I think Sato has a lot to say in this film. I know what I made the joke before, but even beyond that, it's like, at least to me, it was kind of had aspects of like our relation to media, um, and relationships, and there's several things I'm sure you could take away from this, away from those even, um, but that's what I got from it. And Sato does this type of cinema very well. His Pinku films are great. That's the reason I became a fan in the first place. But this and Splatter Naked Blood make a really good double feature. And if you're here for just like the gore and violence, it's definitely there. This movie will shock you. If you're new to Pinku films, this is certainly going to be a rough one for you. If you're not new, you probably know what to expect, but it is pretty rough. The sexual assault is very rough. That's all I can say. The self mutilation kind of cheesy looking, but not terrible. And yeah, it just goes. It's a quick watch. It's less than an hour. It's paced really well. I like the relationship between the lead character and his mother. Um, that's explored a little bit more than in Splatter Naked Blood. In this one is more story focused than that one, I would say. And the boy's like continuous descent into depravity that comes from both him making the serum and sort of like having a connection to it, and it's very rough and dark. There's not anything humorous in this, but if you're looking for like an extreme horror, pinku, nasty exploitation film, this is it. It's great. Um, I highly recommend this one. And if you are a fan of Sato, or if you watch this and you become a fan, definitely check out Splatter Naked Blood. A couple of other recommendations, or a recommendation. I don't want to spoil too much for future reviews here, so a quick recommendation would be, well, the alternate title is The Birthday. Um, I and I like that name better. But the film is called Molester's Train. Um, let's see, it was, yeah, Molester's Train, Dirty Behavior. I think Molester's Train is a series um, of films in Japan, but Sato directed this film, Molester's Train, Dirty Behavior. And I'm going to be doing a review of that later on, but I just want to recommend that quick at the end of the video here for those who enjoyed the previous one, or the film I talked about. Legitimately touching, legitimately moving movie. Still has perverse stuff in it, but it will affect you. And the title of the movie is definitely the most shocking part, in my opinion. And I don't. He films these movies, and they're about like loneliness and abandonment, and our relationships, and he calls them like pleasure kill and molesters trained behavior. But yeah, I digress. Watch them. Um, that's it for today. I'm going to be coming back for day 26 of 31 Days of Horror tomorrow. Remember to subscribe if you haven't. Keep notifications on. As always, I'm your host, Herschel Gillis, signing off for today. Zero thoughts, zero editing, zero brain cells, and zero planning. Thanks, everybody.